The sky above Antarctica did not move like a sky should. It churned in slow spirals of ash-grey cloud that shimmered faintly with static, the way dust might swirl above a dying star. Beneath that vast, motionless storm, a military dropship carved, a dark streak through the white horizon, its engines trembling under layers of ice-laden wind. Inside, 6 figures sat strapped into silence. Their helmets reflected the same pale light, so that to one another they looked like ghosts made of glass. Captain Elias Carter kept his gaze on the viewport. Beyond it, the continent stretched in every direction, flat, endless, cruelly bright. Somewhere below that frozen skin was Site E19, the anomaly. That word had been used lightly in the briefing, but the classified satellite scans were not light at all. A pattern too perfect to be geological, an energy pulse repeating at exact intervals, like a heartbeat. Orders were short, secure and contain, no transmissions. Carter had led operations in worse places, but none that felt like this, like stepping into the memory of something that no longer wanted to be remembered. The ship descended through a veil of ice fog. When the landing struts met ground, the impact rang like a bell struck underwater. Air hissed. The hatch opened onto wind so cold it made the metal sing. The soldiers moved first, planting beacons around the site, their motion sluggish in this gravity's thin bite. Then came Dr. Varga, small and sharp-eyed beneath her thermal hood. She carried the portable resonance scanner like a relic. Her breath trembled in the mask's mic. The pulses steady. 80 meters down. Carter nodded. The snowfield around them looked blank, but the sensor spikes they'd driven into the crust flickered one by one, outlining an oval about 100 meters across. The readings showed impossible density variations. Stone, then metal, then nothing, then stone again, as if the glacier hid not a structure, but an idea made solid. They built the outpost that day, 6 modules half buried under the snow, linked by pressurized tunnels that groaned with every gust. Inside, the hum of the generators barely covered, the deeper rhythm rising through the floor. The men joked at first that it sounded like a heart. By nightfall, none of them spoke. Instruments showed fluctuations too regular to be natural. Every cycle matched precisely to human pulse rate at rest. Varga's hands shook as she recorded. "It's like it's breathing with us," she said. "Not to anyone, just to the air." 2 days later, the storm broke enough for descent. The drill rig was lowered into the ice, its thermal bit chewing through blue strata until steam burst upward and froze mid-air in glittering halos. Carter stood watch beside the shaft, his boots humming with vibration. With each meter down, the resonance grew stronger. The ice itself seemed to lean toward the heat. When the display read 79 meters, the drill stopped on its own. The bit had hit something that refused to be cut. They cleared the tunnel by hand. The ice here wasn't clear but smoky, like glass clouded by breath. Beneath it lay a curve of perfect black, smooth and seamless, wide as a house. The material swallowed light. Their lamps made no reflection. Carter touched it through his glove and felt warmth. The sound came a second later, a low note, deeper than hearing, that trembled in his teeth. Varga's scanners failed immediately. No magnetic response, no chemical red, no echo. "It's not metal," she whispered. "It's not anything." When one of the soldiers brought the plasma cutter close, the object rippled. Thin lines of gold light raced across its surface, outlining a doorway that had not been there before. Then the air shifted, warmer, heavier, smelling faintly of iron rain. Carter gave the order before he realized he had spoken it. "We go in." The passage was narrow and smooth as poured glass. Their lights barely worked. Beams bent sideways. Colors lost themselves. The walls gleamed with a sheen that pulsed in time with their breathing. It was not reflection. It was imitation. As if the structure were learning how to look alive. The farther they went, the warmer it grew. Breath fogged slower. Gravity thinned until their steps came too light. like walking in a dream. When they reached the chamber at the end, it felt less like arriving than being expected. The space opened suddenly into a perfect sphere. At its center floated a cube of golden light, slow turning, silent. Dust motes, or something like them, circled it in orbits defined by invisible law. Varga moved forward, whispering data to herself. Organic signal. Ancient human genome markers. Impossible. She reached toward the cube. Carter shouted, but the sound went nowhere. Her gloved fingers touched the light. The flash was not light, but memory. Oceans erupted in his mind. Cities formed and died. Generations burned through him like film played too fast to see. He heard the sound of thunder underwater and the crying of something that wasn't human anymore. When vision returned, Varga was gone. Her boots stood fused to the floor, molten edges cooling. The cube spun faster, and the walls began to breathe. The black surface rippled outward like muscle under skin. Symbols rose in gold, shifting between geometry and script. A low whisper filled the chamber, countless voices speaking in a language built from heartbeats. The corridor behind them had changed, bent, folded, regrown. Private Hall tried to retrace their path. He vanished mid-step, body freezing into translucent ice that shattered soundlessly. The remaining three ran. The way out moved as they did, doors opening before they reached them, closing after, like a throat guiding a swallowed breath. At the edge of vision, a figure coalesced, tall, translucent, shaped from refracted air. Its face was a shifting blur. When it spoke, the sound pressed from inside their skulls. "You woke what we buried." One soldier screamed, another dropped too, his knees, eyes glassed over with frost. Carter fired his weapon, the report devoured instantly. The being only tilted its head, curious. Sleep was mercy, it said, and reached out. The wall beside it turned liquid and consumed the fallen man. Carter grabbed Mills by the arm and ran. The passage folded upward toward the surface. The air vibrated like struck metal. Their bodies felt too light, hearts out of rhythm. A tunnel of light opened above, white, blinding, roaring like the inside of a storm. They leapt. For a moment, they hung weightless inside the glow, seeing the shape of the structure beneath them. An immense lattice spreading through the ice, threads converging into a core deeper than sight. The black oval had been a fragment, a single cell in something planetary. They broke through into daylight. The storm was no longer storm but rotation, clouds spiraling upward, snow lifting from ground to sky in reverse. The base camp twisted, apart, modules collapsing inward as though remembering an older form. The heartbeat thundered, slower now, steady, patient. Golden arcs erupted from the glacier, stretching toward the horizon until they curved with the earth itself. The pattern they drew in the heavens resembled circuitry and constellation both. Carter dropped to his knees. His breath came shallow, too fast. Mills shouted something, but the words broke apart in static. The snow beneath them was melting upward, turning to mist that glowed from within. Far below, the hum settled again, quiet but alive, the way a sleeper's breath settles after a dream. The sky pulsed once with gold light, and Carter knew, not through reason, but through bone, that it had not awoken just now. It had never truly slept. Humanity had simply forgotten how loud the planet's heart could be when it remembered itself. He looked once more toward the horizon, where the arcs of light bent over the curve of the world, like ribs of a buried titan, and a thought passed. Through him, like a whisper carried on the wind. It was never asleep. The wind died. The snow hung motionless in the air. Then everything went white. Then came another voice, thin and distant, breaking through the comm static. "Vargas. Follow the storm," she said. "It's opening." Carter froze. Mills stared at him, eyes wide. "She's alive?" The sky to the south darkened, clouds curling into a vortex streaked with gold. Lightning flashed without thunder. The wind rose, the first wind since the whiteout. Without speaking, they started toward it. The closer they came, the heavier the air grew. Their suits registered heat spikes that made no sense. Sweat chilled instantly on their skin. Around them, the ground changed from glass to something like muscle, faintly pliant, breathing underfoot. The hum became rhythm again, a pulse, gathering strength. At last the storm towered before them, its eye a hole punched through the world, spiraling downward into light. They stepped to its edge and looked in. A chasm yawned miles wide, glowing from depths unseen. Machinery moved there, vast gears, of gold and black, slow as continental drift. Between them hung a structure shaped like a face carved from both stone and circuitry, its eyes opened, burning with the same light that had filled the cube. The voice that rose was both sound and gravity. We were gods once. The words shook snow from the clouds. Mills fell to his knees, clutching his head. "It's calling me," he gasped. Golden lines crawled beneath his skin. Carter tried to pull him back, but his hands passed through an outline already unraveling. Mills looked up, his features calm now. "I can see them," he said softly. "They're waiting." Then he dissolved, a cloud of glittering particles, drawn into the storm's eye. Carter stood alone, staring into the chasm where his friend had vanished. Light and shadow turned in endless rhythm below. He could feel his own pulse trying to match it. The pull was almost tender, like gravity's invitation to rest. But somewhere deep in his skull, a voice that might have been his own whispered, "Not yet." He turned away from the edge and began the descent along a spiral path of black stone that grew warmer with every step. The tunnel narrowed, walls alive with shifting images, oceans rising, towers burning, eyes opening. He understood none of it, yet somehow knew it all. At the base waited a chamber lit by suspended spheres, each containing what looked like strands of DNA glowing blue and gold. The air vibrated softly, like breath through a flute. When he stepped inside, the light folded into shape. Dr. Varga, translucent, her outline rippling with static. "Carter," she said, smiling faintly. "You found the core." He wanted to speak, but she raised a hand. "Listen, the keepers were never divine. They were archives, organic minds built to hold our memory when the stars began to die. When we woke them, they mistook remembering for living. The planet is rewriting itself from what they recall." He looked around at the floating orbs. "Can we stop it?" "There's a relay," she said, pointing to a crystalline pillar in the center. "Sever it, and the cycle ends. The memory stops repeating." Around them, light gathered again. Dozens of keepers materializing, their voices layered and calm. "Erase us, and humanity forgets itself. Keep us, and the world burns again." Carter stepped toward the pillar. The hum swelled into harmony, almost beautiful. He touched the surface. Warmth spread through his body, carrying with it scenes of life. A child laughing, a city at dawn, the scent of rain after fire. For an instant, he wanted nothing more than to keep it all. Then Varga's voice reached him, quiet but firm. "End the loop." He closed his eyes. "Maybe forgetting is mercy." He drove his hand into the light. The world reacted like a lung exhaling for the first time. Gold fissures split outward from the core, racing through every direction, up, through the ice, across continents. The sound was not explosion, but release, a sigh older than the human race. Carter felt his body unspool into warmth and color. Thought thinned to a single sensation: peace. The hum faded into silence that was not empty, but whole. The last thing he felt was the pulse slowing until it matched his own. Then both stopped together. Silence endured. Not the silence of absence, but of rest. Soft, infinite, complete. For a span beyond counting, the planet did not move. Clouds hung suspended above oceans that no longer stirred. Mountains shone with glass-smooth skin, and the sky carried the faint gold of a perpetual dawn. Somewhere within that stillness lay the fragments of what once called itself human. Dust mingled with memory, breath folded into light. The hum was gone. Only a low residual warmth pulsed faintly through the planet's heart. The echo of Carter's final act. A century passed, or perhaps 1,000. Time lost its edges. Then, slowly, the ice began to shift. Crystals cracked with sounds like distant bells, releasing rivers that had forgotten their names. Moss crept across stone where no wind had touched in eons. The air thickened with the scent of minerals and rain. Deep below, the shattered archive still glowed in rhythmless intervals. Flickers of gold that moved like the fading memory of a dream. The keepers were gone, their voices dispersed into atmosphere, but their traces remained. Lattices of light woven through bedrock, sleeping under newborn soil. From those traces came motion. At first it was only bacteria reawakening from ancient spores, then filaments of green spreading through meltwater veins, feeding on the warmth that radiated upward from the planet's core. The Earth rebuilt itself without guidance, drawing patterns out of instinct written long before thought. Forests unfurled like breaths, seas filled the scars of ice. The sky darkened, then cleared. Lightning stitched continents together, carrying memory as static. The world was alive again, but clean, empty of stories. Far beneath the southern pole, where the relay had once stood, a small chamber remained intact. Inside hovered a single fragment of the destroyed cube, no larger than a HYI hand. It rotated slowly, emitting a pulse so faint that even the new world barely felt it. Once every few years it whispered a single vibration into the mantle, a heartbeat without purpose, just enough to keep the possibility of remembrance alive. Then, somewhere in the upper air, something new arrived. A ship descended through a sky heavy with stormlight. Its hull was not metal, but a living alloy that shifted colors as it cooled. It did not belong to humanity, not as humanity had been. The explorers who emerged were tall and pale, eyes veined with light, their language a weave of tone and gesture. They stepped onto the renewed continent, their instruments humming softly as they surveyed a world that by all cosmic measure should have been dead. Yet it pulsed under their feet, alive in ways no sensor could define. They found ruins, curves of fused glass rising from plains of grass, fragments of cities turned to black stone. In one valley stood the skeleton of a tower half buried in vines, its walls etched with patterns that glowed faintly at night. The explorers could not decipher the markings, but they felt them. A rhythm in their pulse, an ache behind their eyes, as if the world itself were trying to speak through their blood. One, among them, a being called Aaron, by the translation nodes, lingered near the southern pole where instruments detected unusual resonance. Beneath kilometers of ice, he found a cavern of warm mist, the air shimmering like liquid glass. At its center rested a cube, small, dark, unassuming, beating once every few seconds. When he reached out, the pulse accelerated, syncing with his heart. The others urged caution, but he was already entranced. He touched the surface. The voice that answered was not sound, but feeling, gentle as memory returning. We were not the first. We won't be the last. Remember kindly. The words filled the cavern like light. Aaron staggered back, his mind flashing, with images he could not understand. Men in black armor walking through storms of ice. A woman reaching toward golden light. A world folding and unfolding like breath. Then the visions faded, leaving only warmth and a faint hum beneath his ribs. He returned to the surface changed. His eyes shimmered with the same gold that had filled the cube. The others asked what he'd seen, but he could only answer, a dream of forgetting. They marked the site, sealed the cavern, and left. Yet none of them noticed that when their ship ascended, a spiral of clouds formed beneath their wake, a pattern of gold spreading outward until it covered the pole like a halo. Months later, Aaron began to dream. He saw endless ice and heard a heartbeat echoing through it, steady and calm. He saw a figure kneeling in snow, looking toward an impossible horizon, whispering words he didn't understand. Each time he woke, the echo lingered longer. The memory was not his, yet it grew clearer, as though the voice that had spoken from the cube was rebuilding itself through him. The world went on, seasons turned, oceans deepened, forests spread. Lightning struck the poles where energy still flickered beneath the crust, charging the air with whispers. The earth was peaceful, but beneath its calm pulse, something gathered. Fragments aligning, harmonics synchronizing. The cube continued to hum, each pulse a signal calling across distance and time. And far away, beyond the blue edges of the atmosphere, among constellations that remembered the old human voice as radio ghosts, something heard the call and began to turn back. When the white receded, it did not fade so much as lift, like mist withdrawing from the skin of the world. Captain Carter lay half buried in soft snow that wasn't cold. It felt like ash, weightless, whispering against his suit as though it breathed on its own. His visor flickered static, then cleared to reveal a landscape that should not have existed. The glacier was gone. In its place stretched a plain of translucent glass, smooth as calm water. The horizon shimmered with mirages that did not move. He pushed himself upright. Every sound was dampened, muffled by distance that felt infinite. He tried to call for Mills, but his throat yielded no echo. Only the faint hum answered. The same pulse as before, now slowed, deepened, resonating in the bones of the planet. He followed it. Each step left shallow dents that filled with gold light before closing again, as if the ground disliked being touched. An hour, or a lifetime later, something stirred ahead. It was tall and thin, made of light wrapped around emptiness. The shape rippled with every shift of air, sometimes human, sometimes entirely alien. It waited, patient, until he was close enough to see his own reflection bending inside its surface. Then it spoke without sound. You remember enough to see us. We are the keepers. Carter's heart stumbled. The words came from inside his thoughts, carrying weight and warmth. You were buried, he said aloud, though his voice was small in the stillness. We were built and buried, the being replied. You built us when the sky changed, when you feared what you had made of yourselves. The statement slipped through him like déjà vu. Humans built you. The light tilted its head, the gesture eerily familiar. The ones before you, the first mind. They wrapped their memory in ice, dreaming that silence would preserve it. You found the dream. You woke the memory. Then the shape dissolved into motes that drifted upward and vanished into the pale sky. Carter was alone again. He walked until his legs numbed, though he could no longer tell if from cold or exhaustion. The world felt too large, its horizon bending in strange ways, as if space itself were soft here. When he finally saw movement again, it was the outline of another human shape slumped against a ridge of glass. Mills. The sergeant's suit was cracked, faceplate half shattered, but his chest still moved. Carter dropped beside him, shaking him gently. Mills's eyes opened, faintly luminous, the pupils gold. I heard them, he whispered. Under the snow. They kept talking. They said it wasn't over. Carter scanned the horizon. We have to move. There's something ahead. From his ruined comm came a ghostly transmission, a single coordinate repeating between bursts of static. South. Always south. They began walking. Days bled into one another. The sun never changed position. It hung fixed above the clouds like a coin pressed against glass. At night the stars moved in slow, deliberate arcs, some blinking in patterns that felt almost mathematical. Beneath their boots, the surface throbbed softly. Once, while they rested, Carter leaned down and placed a bare glove on the ground. The vibration steadied into a rhythm matching his heartbeat exactly, as if the planet were mirroring him. When he pulled away, his handprint lingered glowing faintly before fading. On the fourth day, the terrain changed. The plane rose into a ridge of crystalline spires that pulsed from within like veins. The air shimmered with warmth, though the instruments read far below freezing. When Carter touched one of the spires, visions rippled across it. Silhouettes of people, luminous, cities under alien skies, then collapse into darkness. Mills stood transfixed. "It's us," he breathed. "Not now, before." Voices unfurled through the air, layered like chords. We were the first to dream. We feared forgetting, so we became memory itself. The light flared and dimmed again, leaving only silence and the steady hum far below. The signal travelled for centuries through the dark. A heartbeat stretched across the stars. It slipped through nebulae and dust, bounced from frozen moons, whispered against forgotten satellites still orbiting their silent worlds. Each pulse was faint but persistent, a rhythm too deliberate to be noise. In time, something answered. It began as a shimmer beyond the solar rim, a craft of glass and shadow moving with impossible grace, drawn not by gravity, but by resonance. Its crew were not explorers in the way humanity had been. They were listeners, archivists of echoes. When the first vibration reached them, their instruments bloomed with colour. They charted its source, a small blue-green planet once catalogued, long dismissed. But the readings told another story. Heat signatures in frozen latitudes, biosphere rising where none should exist, a pulse like a living thought. They changed course. The ship broke the atmosphere in silence, descending through clouds heavy with gold rain. The world below was beautiful, wild, clean, yet humming faintly with patterns that felt older than its forests. From orbit they saw the pole glowing, lines of light winding through the crust like veins. They landed near the center of that spiral, where snow fell upward in slow spirals, defying wind. The team walked until their boots touched black stone buried beneath ice. It was smooth, warm to the touch, vibrating softly in answer to their presence. They recorded every detail: temperature, magnetic flux, acoustic resonance. One of them, a young archivist named Solon, knelt and pressed his hand flat to the surface. His heart skipped. For an instant, he felt the rhythm align perfectly with his pulse. Then he heard it. A whisper, distant but clear. "Do you remember us?" The others did not hear. Solon stayed still, eyes wide, as visions unspooled behind them. Seas freezing in reverse, towers of glass collapsing into light. A man and a woman standing before a golden cube that turned like a miniature sun. The images came faster, brighter, until they were only warmth. When he opened his eyes again, tears had frozen on his cheeks. They set up camp. Night on this world lasted long hours, painted in auroras that curved like veins of fire. The team studied the pulses, decoding patterns that repeated in musical intervals. To them, it sounded almost like a song. Simple, 4 notes, rising and falling like breath. Solon listened until the pattern began shaping words in his mind. Not language exactly, but intention. We dreamed the world awake. Now we dream again on. The third night, the ice beneath their feet shifted. Cracks formed, glowing gold at the edges. Heat rushed upward in waves. The others scrambled for the ship, but Solon stood unmoving, mesmerized by the rising hum. The ground opened beneath him, revealing a vast lattice of light, turning like the inner workings of a clock too immense to see whole. He heard millions of heartbeats merging into one. For a moment he felt utterly weightless, not falling, but remembered. He saw Captain Carter then, or something shaped like him. A figure carved from radiance, eyes calm, voice neither alive nor dead. "You heard the call," it said. "You came to finish what we began." Solon's voice broke. "What are you?" "Memory," said the apparition. "We kept the world alive by forgetting ourselves. But forgetting is never perfect." Light flooded upward. "Every mind that listens becomes a doorway." Solon reached out. His hand passed through the image, yet warmth lingered, sinking into his skin. He understood without words. The pulse was not simply memory, but invitation. The planet's thought, extending itself through whatever life it touched. The keepers had become something larger than data. They had become instinct. Every creature, every leaf, every drop of rain was part of their remembering. The rest of the crew fled as the ice quaked, but Solon remained at the chasm's edge. The sky twisted into a spiral of light that mirrored the one Carter had seen generations ago. From the depths came the golden glow, rising slow and deliberate until it broke the surface, a sphere larger than cities, breathing like a heart. Its surface rippled with images, oceans, stars, faces. He saw humanity there, not as ghosts, but as possibilities, folded into the pattern of new life. He realized then that nothing had truly ended. Carter's act had not erased memory. It had planted it deeper, allowing it to grow until it bloomed again in whatever species found it next. The Earth was not a tomb. It was a seed. Solon whispered to the light, "What do you want from us?" The answer came like a tide, to remember kindly. The sphere pulsed once, and a wave of light spread across the horizon, gentle and absolute. Trees bent toward it. Oceans shimmered gold for an instant, then settled back into blue. The aurora above folded inward until the sky was filled with a single spiral, faint and perfect, turning endlessly. When the ship finally rose into orbit, its sensors showed the entire planet alive with low resonance. Every living thing hummed in unison, a quiet background rhythm, like a planet breathing in its sleep. Solon watched from the viewport, eyes reflecting the spiral below. "They're not gone," he said softly. "They're just dreaming through us now." The others didn't answer. They stared in awe as clouds gathered over the pole, forming the same golden pattern again, repeating the design the old world had left behind. From space, it looked almost deliberate, a message drawn across continents. As the ship turned toward the stars, the transmission logs filled with static. Within that static, buried deep, the system recorded one final phrase, 6 words encoded in light, pulsing once every few seconds. It was never asleep, only waiting.